This video is for you if you're looking for sponsorship. It's a bit of a masterclass, a sponsorship masterclass, because I've got Brian Sims back on again, and also got Dino Zamparelli, who's a race driver who had to go out and find his own sponsorship. So we're going to pick his brains, ask him how he did it, get some advice for you guys watching this. And we've also got a couple of people coming on, Marcus and Wayne, asking their sponsorship questions, the challenges they're having, and we'll together collectively answer them. So take from this what you can. Sit back and enjoy. Thanks for coming, guys. It's a pleasure to have you both on. Now, anyone who's been watching this show for a while now they know, and in my book, actually, I even talk about Dino quite a lot, and he has no idea. But I use him as an example, and it was because of Brian, the fact that I did that and told me his story, and I've obviously worked in the same team as Dino. So everybody knows Brian already because he's been on the show twice. But Dino Zamparelli, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe just, how we know each other, and give us the lowdown on who you are before we start chatting?
Yeah, thanks, Enzo. Well, obviously we met back in 2016. I'm sure I saw you before that. Was it 2016, 2015?
Yeah.
Around the Porsche Cup time. Raced for 4 years in the Porsche Carrera Cup. But prior to that, I'd raced single-seaters. So spent a fair few years building a reputation, building, obviously, sponsorship, and just trying to make a name for myself whilst obviously doing the job on track, which is the hard bit. Or the harder bit is the actual getting the money to go racing. So and obviously we've spoken over the years about sponsorship and working with drivers and so on. So I guess that's where we come into play.
Good. It's just about picking your brains really today, to give people some advice when it comes to sponsorship, because it is still, and it seems like it's even getting harder, but it's always been difficult to get sponsorship now. So it's really, how did you do it? Because you were pretty much nearly a one-man band, but I know you worked with Brian, so not quite. But what you did was really impressive, and it was a GP3 year as well and all that. So I think we should give people the lowdown on that. But before we do it, Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the call. We'll be picking your brains as well.
Well, there's a surprise.
So go on, talk us through the moment where Dino, where you really started to take it on yourself and wear the business hat, I think you called it, after the race weekends, when you had to literally go out there and get the money. And tell us the journey as quick as you can, of course, because it's long.
Yeah, it was 2012, I think it was. I was racing in Formula 2, the old Formula 2, as it was, the Jonathan Palmer series. And my career path at that point was either carrying up the single-seater ladder, GP3, GP2 towards F1, or sports cars. But I knew whatever I did, I had to raise sponsorship and get some more awareness, get people involved in my journey, because it was expensive, and obviously we know motor racing isn't cheap. So I actually was at I think it was an evening with Brian with the TRDC in 2012 at some stage, and Brian was talking about sponsorship and all the work he's done. I'd never met Brian before, and he was sort of talking about his book as well. So that was the first sort of moment where I was switched on to sponsorship, and what can be done, I suppose, as a driver. I'd never really thought about it up to that point. And then, Brian did an amazing talk and talked about his stories and some of the techniques involved. First thing I did was buy the book there and then. I think it was there and then. Got it. Did I get it signed? I can't remember. But I remember seeing you after the talk, and got the book and then read it a few times, and then kind of made a plan straight after that. I read it very quickly, made a plan, and then implemented my plan from there, and landed a fair few sponsors, and a big one, which obviously helps, and then a fair few sponsors along the way, which helped me to get 2 years GP3 fully funded, and then 4 years of Porsche Cup fully funded. So that was kind of the journey as I see it.
Really impressive, mate. So to give somebody how the hell did you do that kind of answer, what do you reckon? What was your first port of call? How did you approach companies? What was your angle? How did you do it?
The big thing was that I took away from it was building your own network and trying to get people involved. Don't be afraid of shouting about what you're doing, what your plan is. Don't be shy about it. Whatever age, whatever sort of category you're in, because people, you'd be surprised the amount of people that want to do stuff, that want to have fun with you and, you know, join your journey no matter what it is. And I think that's obviously, I had to create a story around the journey, which helps. Obviously, Formula One is already sold around the world, so the journey to Formula One was the original sell.
Yep.
And then beyond that, it was creating a network of people that I could sell to. You know, whether that was a corporate day, race day, hospitality. It didn't matter what the hook was. It was getting to people and saying, "This is what I'm doing. Let's get you involved in that journey." So that was the big thing I took away from Brian's book. There was lots of other things in there when the book's big, you know. But that was the first thing I took away that I started to do.
And what's that involve? That involves cold calling?
You know, I didn't do much of the cold calling, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I did a little bit, but in fact, the only time the cold calling ever worked for me was with a company called Dino PC. I think it was Dino for dinosaur. Yeah. And I literally, I got 500 quid out of them for my bonnet thing, just purely because my name was Dino, and it just spiked their interest at the time, and I managed to get some money out of them. That was the only time that I actually got a cold call, but I really didn't do much. Maybe I could have, you know, extended that, especially with an entry level pricing, such as my Bristol Bonnet thing, which was 500 quid at the time, or 1,000 quid. Yeah. But no, it was all about who I knew. So it was going to people I knew from my contact list already, ringing them up, having a chat, because then obviously they can introduce you to so many more people. And it was just pounding the phone of people that I knew. A lot of people said, "No, I can't sponsor you, but I know someone that will." That was usually the conversation. It was like, "No, I can't really get involved now, but speak to so and so." And you just go down a rabbit hole of different people. And I eventually, you know, I got a private bank sponsor. That was through 2 different people, which ended up being a really good sponsor over the years. So yeah, it's interesting who you can find off the back of you know, one person, I guess.
Yeah, it's amazing how we're connected, actually, isn't it? Explain the format of how you did the Bristol Bonnet then. Obviously, this is Porsche. You've got a bit more real estate on the front of your car than you have with a single-seater. Explain the business model, should we say, and how you managed to pull that off, because that was really impressive for me.
Yeah, the Bristol Bonnet was my £500 entry-level scheme. So I realised a lot of people in Bristol, where I live, were asking questions, were, you know, engaging, but not necessarily sponsoring. So I thought, well, in order to get people interested, why don't I set up, I got £500 on the bonnet, put the little sticker on the bonnet. And obviously you can't see the bonnet sticker if you're a company, but when they used to come, so it was an excuse to come to see me race, and then they could see it. It was an excuse to be involved and obviously talk about it and shout about it.
Yeah.
One of my biggest sponsors came in Porsche Cup, came from the Bristol Bonnet through someone it sponsored. He then promoted it on Facebook and said, "Look what I'm involved in." That person had a friend that saw it on Facebook. He then said, "I want to meet Dino and see what this is all about." And he became a very good, a good 2 or 3 year sponsor to me. Fully funded in, it was a good couple of years. And we did Super Cup together, Super Cup race at Silverstone, all from a tiny £500 sponsor, which I would never have met this guy otherwise. So it worked really well. And there was other things that I got from it. It probably ended up being a 200-300 grand scheme. You know, I started off as a 10,000. I managed to get 20 companies on board for that year. So that was 10K just as cash. But then above that, if you actually work out the, it's probably more actually if you work out what I got off the back of it. I would say it's nearly more like 500,000. So it was That's definitely great. Worth it.
So it's basically selling stickers for on the car. I think it was it 1,000 for the bigger one, if I remember.
It was.
Thinking back now to that day when you told me. So you've had all these different stickers on the front, different sizes, but then it was like a network party, right, on the bonnet.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you had a network party, I think, or a big thank you at the end of each year.
Yeah, I did a launch event and a post-season event, which is an excuse to get more people involved.
Yeah.
I mean, 500 quid, most companies can afford 500 quid or 1,000 quid. I think I had 3 actually, maybe even 2,000 as well.
Yeah.
Or 5,000, 1,000. There was a tiered system, silver, gold, bronze. And yeah, I mean, it was really good. I think I managed to get a few people on the 5K scheme. So the whole thing, now I think back, the whole thing was actually pretty good.
It was
You've got to
impressive.
work it, of course. You know, there were Silverstone in 2017, I had full corporate boxes out of 30 or 40 people each. I must have had about 100 people at Silverstone from sponsors and guests. And then I had to go and race. So it was, you know, it's not easy. And of course, you can't go and spend loads of money on activating it all because you're trying to keep it for the racing. So the hard bit is doing all of that yourself as a driver and then performing on track. But you get quickly used to it when you realize, as Brian just said, you've got to be businessman in the week and then, you know, racing driver on the weekend. You quickly can sort of shut off about an hour before the race and then crack on.
Mate, you are playing it down massively. It's when it's your passion and you live it, you just do it day by day. And it's like, but you think back now, it's quite damn impressive. You know, you literally had a business model that worked. And it's great if, you know, drivers that have got white space on the car that have most of the budget paid already, they're in that spot where they can capitalize right now. And then it can help them out for the years instead of waiting until they've run out of money. But yeah, I don't see enough people doing that. So that's great stuff. So I think we should get one of our guys in that are waiting to come and have a question because they've been waiting for half an hour now. I'll start with Wayne and he can introduce himself and ask his question and we'll just help him out. So, okay, Wayne.
Yeah.
Well, just literally introduce yourself. Tell us like 2 seconds of your story because you're your boy and what he's doing, and then throw us a question and we'll see what we can do with it.
Okay, well, my last name is Thomas Jack Lee, and he's racing in the mini JCWs at the British Touring Car weekends. This is his first year. He's not even 16 and a half yet. And basically, he's doing really well. He's top 10, top 5 already. He's having some really good battles with the other lads, doing himself proud. We had Not Killer at the weekend, which is an amazing weekend. Yeah. And he actually started the final TV race from pole position. So that was great TV, great advertising for him. So it's just moving on from there, really.
Great stuff.
So,
yeah, we've been following the journey, mate, on LinkedIn, by the way. So anyone who's interested, it's it's all there.
Yeah, it's all there every sort of time I can. But yeah, he's doing me proud. I can't be any sort of prouder, really. Good. And just a good, clean racer. Needs to get his elbows out a little bit more, but he's still only sort of 16 and a half. But yeah, so what I wanted to ask is basically you have a good meeting or a contact with somebody, a company, etc. They like what you do. They like Thomas, and they even sort of come up with comments like, "We will do something. We'll get back to you. We're going on holiday, or we got some meetings with so and so, etc."
Yeah.
But then you give it time, a couple of 3 days after they're back from holiday, so you don't pressurize them too much. But then basically you get no replies, and it just goes dead quiet.
Yeah.
So the question is, what's the best way to approach this? How to get around it and get them to come back to you without like the hard sell, if that makes sense. So that's basically
it's like most, very often you can people are worried about upsetting the person by pushing them too hard, and then you don't even call them in the first place. It's very common. So Brian, go for it, because I know you would have had this a lot.
I'm not ducking the question, but I tend to go back a stage and not get myself into that position in the first place. How do I do that? It's about controlling the first meeting that you have with that person. And when you take control of that first meeting, you have an objective. The objective is to use God gave me quite big ears, and I use them in the meeting. I ask questions and try and find 3 or 4 key areas that you genuinely believe you might be able to help that company with. It might be looking for brand awareness, sales incentives, and exhibition display units. So you end your first meeting by saying, right, okay, what I'd like to do, and this is a classic example, it would be incredibly presumptuous of me to tell you what's going to work for your company right now. What I'd like to do is to go away diarize with you before I go a meeting, follow-up meeting in about 10 days' time, at which I will come back and present a proposal based on purely the 3 things that you said were important to your company. And what happens? 2 things happen. He said it would be very difficult for him now. He's agreed that those things are the things that would be good. So now when you go away and come back with a proposal, you can start the second meeting by saying, as we agreed, the 3 things that you wanted to achieve with this sponsorship program were, this is how I believe we can go forward and deliver them. So you've actually created 2 things. You've created a situation where you've got a date down the road. You haven't got to worry about chasing up. Secondly, you've got an opportunity to talk about what he thinks and has told you are important. All the other things that you were going to deliver, you don't need to. And in that way, I solve that problem, because it is a real problem. You don't want to pester companies. And today, secondly, let's be honest, and I don't know if Dino agrees with me on this, but I have never known it so difficult to get to speak to people on the phone as it is today, with people working.
Get a phone number.
It is so difficult.
It's classic, isn't it? I think my only thing to add on to what Brian said is try and just keep inviting them to stuff, because it'll jog their memory. You know, I had quite a few of those where I would I sent one of the triggers. I managed to get quite a high prominent brand actually, but they sponsored me in the end. Not a lot, but they did sponsor, because I sent a newsletter. So I was hounding them for ages, and the guy wouldn't respond. And then eventually I sent a newsletter, just added them in because I didn't really care. This was all before the GDPR stuff, by the way. So I added them in, and then he rang me and said, "Oh, I appreciate you adding me into that. I realized how hard you work. Why don't we have a quick meeting?" So sometimes it does work, just hounding them, not hounding them so that it's annoying, but just hounding them in a nice way, you know, come to this, or I've got an event here, or there's a race near you, or, you know, it could be something like that. Especially if you think there's value in that, then I think that can work in the long term.
Yeah. And one more thing is always make sure that you're talking to like the decision maker, because you can spend so long talking to the minky in the office that hasn't really got any power. And then they don't like to say no. They don't want to be that person. They just keep putting it off. And you're sitting there hanging on to their every word when it's just somebody who's in the marketing department. So usually the person at the very top is usually quite straightforward. They ain't got time to mess around, and they don't want you pestering them. So they give you a straighter answer. So yeah, I would always, it's all these preventing this happen. Like Brian said, go back a step. It's from that, you know, do hound the current ones a little bit, obviously, just get an answer, yes or no. But prevention is obviously better going forward.
Yeah, it's obviously important. To us, getting the sponsorship is the be all and end all to keep Thomas racing. I think now, with the financial situation in the world, people aren't spending quite like they used to. They're putting their money away because they don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. And I think I found that's a big problem at the minute as well.
It is.
They're not going out there that extra step. They're just saying, right, we'll put it here in the bank or wherever until we know what's going to happen in 6 months to a year.
It depends on the company philosophy. There will be some that have got a product or something coming out and they're like, right, we need to get this name out now. Yeah. Otherwise we will go bankrupt. So it depends if they're on offense or defense. So there are companies that will, they will, honestly. You've got to source them out.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, guys.
Good, mate. We'll let you get back to work, and all the best with everything. And Tomo, we'll be watching.
Thank you. Yeah, keep following them. Brilliant. Cheers, guys. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
You'll have to put it down. I don't want to kill the whole call. Okay. Right. Hello, Marcus.
There we go. Hi.
Hello. How you doing? Right. You've been waiting 46 minutes. So thank you for that. Introduce yourself, and then we'll get this ball rolling.
I am obviously here on the West Coast of America. Very pleased to be able to talk to you gentlemen today. I've read a little bit about you. I certainly have read a lot about Enzo. I've read his books and follow his, subscribe to his YouTube page. And I think, Enzo, you take the same approach that I've always believed in for sponsorship seeking. And just real briefly, my background is I was in my non-motorsports background, I was a federal agent here in this country with Secret Service and DEA, which is a Drug Enforcement Administration, for about 17 years. And then I left the government and opened my own company, which I grew from basically just me to a pretty good sized company with about, I don't know, 15, 20 employees from time to time. I sold it in 2017 and have been, like right now, I work for the Public Defender's Office here in Fresno County. Motorsports wise, I have been racing something, either motorcycles or race cars, since I was probably 13. What I do now is I drive, well, now it's powered by an alcohol motor, but I drive funny cars. And I've driven them on nitro, I've driven them on alcohol, and it's certainly not like trying to drive a Formula One car, or even in that same league in road racing. But it's an expensive endeavor.
Yeah.
I have been searching for sponsors really throughout my entire driving career. I've been driving funny cars since 1993 is when I got my first one. And when I have had money, I've had them. And when I haven't had money, I've had to sell them. And then as soon as I had money again, I'd buy another one. So the search for sponsorship has been ongoing and unending. I think I wrote to you, Enzo, like a week or so ago in absolute frustration. I think I'd had maybe one too many glasses of wine that night.
Yeah.
So I wrote to you in frustration because I'd gotten another, well, actually didn't even get a rejection, just got ignored. And I noticed, Brian, with your, I watched, I'm not sure where I saw it, but I watched a video last night with you, and you talked about your first deal that you got. And it sounded like exactly what I did. I've had one significant deal, and it was when I bought my very first funny car in 1993. And I don't know how it happened, but I just sent out a letter to a gentleman that owns a chain of hotels here on the West Coast. And I said, I've got this new alcohol funny car, and I think that you should sponsor me. And he did. But after that, it's been nothing, $1,000 here and there, but nothing that's required to run at the level that I want to run. So that's the 50-cent tour of my life.
No, that's great. That's DEA. That's something to go from that to owning your own company and running alcohol cars. It is a good story, and I think that's kind of where I think this will head, is that is a story that is quite unique and sellable, and actually could get a bit of attention if done the right way. But throwing it to you, Brian, what's your initial thoughts for someone in this position to actually get some attention and get some sponsorship or someone to join?
What it made me think of, the first thing that came to mind was two racing drivers in America, both father and son, John Paul and John Paul Jr. I don't know if you remember them. Both went to jail for paying through drugs for their motor racing.
Oh yeah.
Over the years there have been a few.
Yeah.
We
won't go there though, right? We won't go there.
Okay, I don't want to sound sort of finicky on this, but the one thing I picked up there was that you've sent out a lot of material to people and telling them, what you can do for them. The real key to successful sponsorship hunting, seeking, whatever you like, is I come back to two things on the side of your head, ears. And that is to get yourself in a situation where you ask the company what they're looking for. What are their issues? What is getting in the way of them selling more products or more services? And let them tell you, that the tendency, however hard we all of us, we've all been guilty of it. You know, I know, Dino, you've been in your early days, you did this, I've done it. You go in and you tend to be very enthusiastic and tell the person what's good for them. And very few people like being told that. But if you go in and ask them, and yeah, tell me about your business, talk to them and get their opinions as to what they believe they're looking for, and then try and help meet them. I know that sounds very sort of trite to say that and very easy, but it's something that the more you do of it, the easier it becomes. And that is getting a meeting where you sit and listen to the company. I've managed to do that right up to and including Formula One, and it's worked time and time again.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. I still come back to, is there a trick that you, I don't know a trick, but a process that you use to even get them to speak to you at a level where, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to throw it to Dino to say, you know, just go back.
Dino will tell you what it is.
To what he used to do. So you missed it obviously in the first part of the video, but he was talking about how he had on the hood of the car lots of different companies giving a little bit of money, and it was like you could buy in for £500 was the starting price, and he had different things. So he's probably a good one for that. So what do you think, Dino, to give your advice on this side of things?
Yeah, hi Marcus. What I would do if I was you, I would probably package up. If I just put myself in your shoes right now, I would package up a track day. I'd package up a race day hospitality on whatever racing calendar you're in, and I would use that as my in. I'd say, come and do a track day with me, Marcus. Here's my story. Sell the story about you and your life, because then that's suddenly interesting, and I would buy that if I was in where you are and that came across my desk. I'd be more interested in that than sponsoring you on a car that I didn't know anything of, etc., etc. So that's what I would do, to be honest with you, is package up stuff that you can sell and use that as your nucleus to then offshoot. And you might get someone that gives you 5K, 10K, 30K, a million, don't know. But right now, if you're just banging on the door saying sponsor me, probably not going to work. You need to have things to sell and itemize it. And that's what I would do. Yeah.
It's just got to make sense to their world, because sponsors too donation. It's too like, I'm giving money away. Yep. And none of us would sponsor, right? If somebody came to us and said, I'm racing or I'm doing something else, do you fancy joining my journey? It's just not important until you translate it into a way that actually puts money in their pocket somehow or answers their pain. And it's just, it's the entrepreneurial mind, isn't it? Providing them something that they want, even if you're just finding out solutions through motorsport in general. Or you could do what Dino did back in the day, when you've got the car and you're using that as just a pure, I can sell space on this car because I'm running it anyway, and it's only going to be a little bit of money. I can sell packages. So there's actually numerous ways, but I think, yeah, the normal sponsorship of a driver is just, there's zero in it for them. Mm-hmm. So it's just giving them something they want and making it priced in a way that's virtually, you know, it's a very easy sell or easier sell. Okay. So it's a bit of brainstorming, but even just going to, like Brian said, going to companies and asking them what they want. I'm just researching, because I think motorsport can offer solutions, growth solutions for companies. And I'm just going around companies now and just finding out what they need, because I think I've found an opportunity here that can, and just that, like, yeah, I'll give you, have a coffee with you. Fine. I'll tell you what my problems are and you'll figure it out, I'm sure.
Yeah, honestly, Enzo, I think when I was reading your books or, listening to you, that when I was a CEO, I owned my company and we were pretty successful, not hugely, but, I made $1 million a year, right? And people approach me and I think the only person I ever sponsored was my receptionist's brother, who raced motorcycles. I threw $1,500 his way, but only because I knew her. And it was kind of a favorite to her. Yeah. And I had a lot of people, and they would send me the same approach. Nobody asked me what can I do to make your business grow, and so I didn't have time for them.
Yeah, mate. Well, that's it. That's what Dino kind of traded off, was people he kind of knows that know someone. Yeah, I'll throw 500, 1,000 at you. So I think that's still a model that works now, Dino. It's really good to see
Yeah.
that. It always will,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's knowing people who know people who knows people. So
Yeah,
I think that's it's a good way of getting in. But I do think you'll find success in packaging up Marcus's track days, because that's individual to you anyway. And
Yeah.
you sound like an interesting guy that's got a lot of stories. So if I was over there and you put that came on my desk, I probably would look at it, especially if you could then individualize it to whatever car you could, and then you can get into different companies about different cars that you could sell, brands, and utilizing that, getting people out on track, and then you've got a targeted audience that you could sell to.
Okay. All right. Is that it from everybody?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I think so. Thanks for joining us, Marcus. That's great stuff.
Well, thank you, all three of you gentlemen. I value all of your opinions. You guys have been doing it and making it work. So you're the people you want to talk to about it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's better than just an email reply. I thought, why don't we just make a show instead and answer your question?
Sure.
Hopefully it helps quite a few people.
I
Great.
hope so too.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, both. So there's quite a bit there, isn't there? We can take from that. Any leaving thoughts, Dino, for drivers that are literally watching this thinking, I want to start or I want to actually carry on racing? Anything that's like, it could be, motivational, it could be, character or something. What would you give us?
I would say you have to adapt. I mean, it's modern day. I don't envy anyone, but there are things that you can do. And in that last call there, I mean, that was, I think, sound advice for myself. You've got to individualize packaging. You can't just say sponsor me, because it's too broad nowadays, especially. You've got to almost siphon it off and say, what am I selling? And it might be that someone goes, I'll have all of it. And then that's one big sponsor for lots of little things. But yeah, it's from my point of view, yeah, it's hard, of course, to try and get traction. But maybe start small. I would say try and avoid, to a degree, big, massive corporate companies, because it's so hard to get a decision. And nowadays with the climate and all that sort of stuff, motor racing isn't necessarily held in such a high light. So you're going to go for companies, in my opinion, that are local, that medium to small. You can go large, and don't be put off by that, but it takes a lot of work. Yeah, start small and build, and I think that's where I managed to get a lot of success. And then, as I say, individualize things. Track days. What are you selling? Track days, race day hospitality, branding, events, personal appearances. There's so much you could sell off the back of what you do, and they all add up. So utilizing that to gain sponsors and a network is where I would sort of start if I was redoing it now.
Yeah, and it's a journey. I think that's what people haven't got patience for. It takes years. And if you speak to most entrepreneurs and people that made it, even if it's Amazon, Jeff Bezos, it's like, I started selling books online. Very, very narrow. Big business, obviously, it turns into, but it's a narrow start. It's not like I'm trying to do everything all at once. And I think drivers have got to do that. So if they've got one or two products, services that they're selling, like you said, and they pound the streets with that, they learn how to sell. This is something that Brian's good for, always talks about, is you actually got to get out there to be a salesperson. And again, feedback and making contacts, it's actually just doing that first bit. And then it just grows from there. You can't really map it out, can you, from that? So no, that's sound. And how about yourself, Brian? One advice to finish with?
Yeah, I come back to the old one again, that most people in companies have a boss, and their job is to keep that boss happy and not to take risks. So you've got to help them. You've got to actually show them what business motorsport can do for a business. And that is the problem. They sit there and they tend to think brand awareness, hospitality, PR. Yeah. Because most people, sponsorship, sticking stickers on a car, when you get into particularly the corporate world, and you're starting to go from the Formula 3, Formula 2, where you're talking big chunks of money, they don't really work and understand what you can do with a company. There's so many different things. So I brought out this this whole presentation, and it's already got me into one of the biggest companies in the world in this particular industry, talking to them because they had no idea what you can do with motorsport sponsorship other than the obvious.
Yeah, tremendous. Okay, boys, thank you very much for your time this evening. It's really valuable. You know, kids and well, not just kids. Everyone's going to take so much from it. So thanks for your wisdom, and we'll see each other at tracks somewhere very soon.